Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scariest Podcast.
Woo!
Where we again are recording super late. I'm Robin Grace, and this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to chat about some interesting stuff.
I mean, I hope so. I hope it's not boring. But yeah, we're recording late. I am super tired. I'm pretty excited about my topic. Robin, what are you going to be covering this week?
I am covering what's called the miracle of the sun.
The miracle of the sun.
Because we all know that sun being up there is quite the miracle.
My son, not my son, the sun has something to do with mine too. So I'm kind of excited. Yeah, I'm going to be covering the Dark Watchers, which I've sort of like seen before. It's part of my
odds? We keep doing this.
I know we do overlap a lot. It's part of my Skeptical August month, which I actually really enjoyed doing this topic. That said, if any of you are listening right now and you're like, I really want to hear some homegrown horrors, we used to do 2 on the topic episodes, then we just shifted all of them to the storytime episodes. So if you're listening for a homegrown horror, storytime episodes are where that is at. Robin, what is a homegrown horror?
Homegrown horrors are these stories of experiences, paranormal, supernatural, spiritual, like night terror type stuff, creepy things that'll creep us out,
sleep
that
paralysis,
have happened,
ghost stories,
things that have happened to you or your friends or your family. We've had hilarious ones where it just happened to be super coincidental, and I think those are some of our favorites.
It's just always funny when someone realizes that they weren't being haunted, they were just silly or overreacting.
Right.
So it's good times. But yeah, that's what a homegrown horror is. So if you have a story like that and you would like to share it with us, we would love to hear it. We would love to read it on the show. Email storytime@scarish.com. Go to scarish.com, which is our website, and fill out the form on Contact Us if you'd like. Or you can go to any of our social medias, facebook.com/scarishpodcast, @scarishpod, or @scarishpodcast. @scarishpod is Twitter, @scarishpodcast is Instagram, and send us your story that way. We got a lot this week. I'm pretty excited. We have some new folks tuning into the show, and they're sending us their stuff, and it's really, really exciting. So for those of you who've been listening for a while and haven't sent us your stories yet, these new folks, the new blood is going to get in before you did, and I just want to say, like, that's on you. That's on you. So send us your stuff. Seriously, we're excited to hear it. We want to hear about it. That said, last week, I covered a topic called hypnosis. Some of you may have heard of it. It was actually really, really fun, and I would like to point out that I consider it a huge success. If by huge success, I mean a few people reached out to tell us about their hypnosis experience. And I do appreciate the tact that everyone took, because sometimes folks like to reach out to us, and on occasion they can kind of be dicks. We've only had that happen maybe a few times, barely ever, and not during this round of feedback, which was really nice. I am very grateful for that. And that has not always been the case, like I mentioned. Mandela effect.
Wow.
That was probably my least favorite show we've ever done, just because everyone's like, you're wrong.
Well, we were wrong on a couple
Some people
of
got
things.
pissed. I wasn't even mad about the Energizer Bunny thing.
Yeah, because we were totally
wrong. I was
wrong.
like, yeah, we're straight up wrong about that. But I was upset where it's like, you just don't know, man. Like, you don't know about parallel universes intersecting. I'm like, it's Berenstain or whatever the fuck those bears are called. And everyone just got super butthurt about it. That was not the case with hypnosis. So I have 3 responses that I'm going to read to you folks. And if we go through something and you have a personal experience with it, please share it with us. We really do appreciate that. And if you want it read on the show, we definitely want to read them, because we do want that feedback loop, because it's just a lot of fun.
Cool.
So the first one came to us on Instagram, and we don't know the name of the folk. It's just someone named KAR_Q39.9, which definitely sounds like a radio station. You're listening to Car 39.9. Or not. Fuck you, Robin.
I was just like trying to think of how you would make 39.9 like a cool radio station sounding. It's more like a channel, like a TV channel.
The 39.9.9, I don't think is a TV station, but whatever. Okay, we're going to read this. Here it goes. Hey. I'm a long-time listener to your amazing podcast. Thank you. And I'm currently listening to the part of your most current episode about hypnosis, and when Adam said that it can be used for childbirth, it triggered a memory of my mom telling me that she was hypnotized when I was being born. She said it was totally painless, and she was hypnotized to Enya, in parentheses, if you know who that is.
Oh my goodness, Enya.
She is actually a licensed hypnotist. I begged her to hypnotize me just for fun, also to try and get rid of anxiety and bad memories, but she refuses. She tells me it's totally legit, so yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys what came to my mind while listening.
Nice.
So, solid feedback. It's nice to know that someone actually used it for childbirth, which I thought was the most outrageous claim. Like, I would be convinced that someone could be hypnotized into murdering someone before I could be convinced that someone could be hypnotized to not feel the pain of childbirth.
The whole hypnotizing thing just reminds me of that episode of Doctor Who. You always shake your head when
it's because you're rehashing this from last week.
I know. It's just it just reminds me of Doctor Who, where it's like you can't hypnotize someone to the point where they would hurt themselves. Where it's just.
I mean, that's a blood thing. That was like blood control.
Blood control
versus hypnosis. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and it's going to come into play here in a little bit.
Ooh.
Actually, a friend of mine back in Northwest Indiana had an experience with hypnosis. I heard about it through a mutual friend, and I was like, I'm going to reach out to them and see if they want to give me their story, which they did. I let them know I would keep them anonymous, so I've decided to call them Tiddlywinks. And Tiddlywinks used to work at a hypnotist's office, so I reached out to her for her experience, and she said, quote, in reference to the hypnotist she worked for, he was a weirdo, but people loved him and swore by his work. He, quote, hypnotized me to quit smoking, but I'm such an asshole that no matter what, I was going to prove that I could, quote, beat hypnosis and started smoking again just to prove him wrong. Because I'm a dick like that. But I think if you were in the right frame of mind and after spending that much money, it probably would be successful. I think it's really funny because she mentions like people pay a lot of money for this. So whether or not like it's going to take, you're just that much more motivated to have it take because you like invested money into it. You know what I mean? So that's a good thing to keep in mind. She goes on to say, the guy was a dick and a complete loony, and he never paid me on time, so that's why I left. Ha! She did confirm that he's no longer in business.
Wow.
I had heard through our mutual source that he had actually put my friend under, so I asked her to go into detail about that, and she said, quote, yeah, I remember him putting me, quote, under. Then there was this recording that you would listen to with headphones, and I remember laying there thinking, I'm just going to get up in the middle of it, and I physically couldn't. It freaked me out because I'm so claustrophobic, I felt like I had no control.
That's crazy.
That is crazy, because she's super skeptical, so the fact that she couldn't get up, like, it freaked her out straight up. Like, and we talked a little bit more after this, and she said, like, it's kind of freaky, it's definitely not for me, I don't like feeling like I'm not in control.
Right.
So, definitely something to keep in mind if you're curious about it, but you're also a control freak, or you have phobias of, like, not being in control of your own body.
Yeah.
And the last one came from Chris, who is a friend of the show, and he reached out with this, and it says... just finished the segment on hypnosis. I'm a magician / mentalist and use hypnosis in my act. There was a frustrating amount of misinformation and romanticized stories, and I don't want to be a troll, so I figured I'd message you directly. I will say we kind of pointed out that the stories were romanticized, because it was like, yeah, these are crimes where people acted like they were hypnotized.
But they're not really.
We weren't like saying those were things that we completely believed in. I'm very skeptical about that stuff. He goes on to say, so hypnosis in a nutshell, what is it? The Webster was pretty accurate, but there's also a form of self-hypnosis that everyone experiences almost daily.
What?
Whether you're zoned out in traffic or glaze over looking at a computer monitor at work.
I can totally do the whole traffic thing, because sometimes you drive and you don't realize
you're just thinking about something else,
and you get to where you're going, but you haven't been paying attention the whole time.
See, I always called it being on cruise control.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Your brain puts your body on cruise control, so your body does what it needs to get home through muscle memory, and then it's just like, I'm just going to take a little siesta.
Well, it's like your eyes are registering everything that's happening. It's like your body's doing all the work, but you're mentally, you're like somewhere else.
It's like you're checked out.
It's weird.
You're zoned out, but your body is doing enough where it can prevent you from causing an accident.
It's so crazy though, right? Where
I totally agree.
You get to your destination, you're like, I don't even remember the last 15 minutes.
And I can like listen to a podcast at work while also doing my job and also thinking about something else. And I'll realize like, wow, I haven't been listening to my podcast in 10 minutes. I need to rewind. But I've been working that whole time and my work's been getting done. Where it's like I kind of just stepped out. So I don't know if you'd call it a hypnosis so much, but I've always just called it putting my body on cruise control.
It's got to be like some sort of meditative thing where your brain kind of just goes into this mode, you know? I don't know. So the self-hypnosis thing, I can totally see.
Yeah.
Like you just do it to yourself.
Agreed. Chris goes on to say, what can you make people do? Nothing they wouldn't normally do. A vegan wouldn't eat a steak. A religious person wouldn't be an atheist. Their core identity stays the same. You can only play essentially on the surface at first. With hypnotherapy, a smoker has to really want to quit for it to work, i.e. Tiddlywinks going back to smoking as a big fuck you to her boss.
Oh, Tiddlywinks.
Pocket watches and metronomes? Not really. Yeah, we kind of just talked about the fact that was sort of like the beginning stages of how they'd use a focal point to like move someone into the hypnotic state.
Yeah, I can. It's just like something to focus on. So
yeah.
you should focus.
I know there's a million different methods, and like all the
hypnotists
I've ever seen on stage, they don't use any of that. There's like 3, 2, 1, you're asleep, and then the person goes to sleep.
I've never seen one live.
It's weird.
Really?
He goes on to say, yeah, it really is. He goes on to say, not really. Those provide a focal point. It can work with staring at a button or a dot on the wall. How does it work? So you know when you have too much happening on a PC and the whole thing freezes up, so you hit Control-Alt-Delete? It's the same concept. The brain is focused on, for stage hypnosis, overstimulated, and the hypnotizer is able to verbally task manager buttons, or hit the verbal task manager buttons. So a stage hypnosis works like this. If you ever watch one, they start by doing games with the entire audience, and they'll find the more susceptible people and pull 20 of them on stage. In fact, car_Q39.9 later went on, like when we were just kind of having casual conversation, to mention that their mom said that these things that they would do with folks would be like to tell the audience, like, hey, do this. And like the people who would react first were more susceptible to instruction versus people who are like reluctant to participate.
Okay, so the people that are more like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. They're like, ooh, so if I tell them to do something.
It's how you identify the people who are into it or willing to play along with like the scenario that they're in. Like if we were there,
to get to actually want to do it while they're in their subconscious or
like
something.
Like if we were there and they're like, raise your hand, folks. Like I don't think either of us would raise our hands. We'd be like, nope, I'm not going on that goddamn stage. So the people I
don't want to be a part of it. That's why I think I'm like, please
don't
call
the people who do raise
me.
their hands, those are the people that you realize are susceptible and you bring them on. He goes on to say, they'll do more games until they find their core group, and that's your chicken clickers. I don't know what that means.
I'm assuming it's like how you train a dog where you make the clicking and they'll do whatever.
It's funny. Your friend wouldn't be all flirty if it was against who she was. I will say she must have been repressed because she was not that person whatsoever when this stuff took place, when I told the story. She was not.
Some people like to do stuff and they don't normally get to do stuff.
I mean, maybe while he was hypnotizing her, he was giving her shots of tequila because we all know that that's a gateway drug to a really fun time. So.
Oh my God.
Going on. He says, crime? No. Well, not if you're a regular person. If you're a criminal, you might do something, but not outside of your criminal wheelhouse. A pickpocket won't all of a sudden be an assassin.
I was about to ask for pickpockets. Like, can you tell someone to pickpocket someone else?
If they're already a pickpocket, then yes. He goes on to say, Saran, that's beyond basic hypnosis. I did mention during the Saran part, the guy who assassinated RFK, that he said he was hypno-programmed, like years later. Chris goes on to say, the government used to do these tests where they would break someone mentally, then reprogram them over months and years. Ted Kaczynski was part of that.
It's like what we were talking about when I brought up the movie.
The Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He goes on to talk about that too. And I will say, I put a note too, Ted Kaczynski actually wasn't a part of the government experiments, at least the spot that I think Chris is referencing. It was an experiment at Harvard with 22 subjects back in like 1963.
What?
Yeah, they brought them on. They brought on brilliant people. They had them give them their ideas. They basically built them up like they're king shits. And then when they presented it and they're at their most vulnerable, they basically destroyed them.
What?
And treated them like as horrible as they possibly could.
How does Harvard get away with that?
Because it was as a psychological study. At this point, they wouldn't get away with it, but it was like the 60s. And they're like, we want to see what happens to fragile people with powerful brains. And they basically broke Ted Kaczynski and created the Unabomber.
Wow.
Yeah, it's some bizarre shit. So, I mean, it's not exactly how all of that went down. There's a lot more factors to it, but that was definitely a contributing factor. Getting back to the end of Chris's thing, he says, so it is a real thing. Check out The Men Who Stare at Goats. So we did reference that last episode. Robin brought it up again. It's a true story, and I referenced it in my act. So in conclusion, hypnosis is real. It's not like the movies, and can be both fun and beneficial. There's an awesome TED Talk called Hypnosis is Real. It has some great info and exampbles.
I love TED Talks.
Like TED Talks. They have so many now, though. I'm starting to
get burned out?
I feel like they're watered down a little bit more.
Oh, I mean, I only watch the ones that I'm like, oh, this one's really cool.
Like amazing technology or something you didn't know anything about.
I do a lot of the women power ones.
That's cool too. Chris finishes out with, anyhow, love you guys. Just my 2 cents as someone who actually uses it on occasion. Cheers.
I think that's really cool to have a show that you actually use that on.
Yeah.
And to have someone who has that experience. And I think that's really neat.
I agree. And so it's difficult for me when I cover topics like hypnosis to go through the true crime aspect of it and listen to people saying they were a perfectly normal human being, then they were hypnotized, now they're a murderer, where I'm just
because it's unbelievable.
This is a lie. Yeah. This is a total freaking lie.
Because you're skeptical. And this is your skeptical month.
Yes, this is Skeptical Month of August, so super excited about that. So before I move on into my topic of the show this week, I do want to take a brief moment.
Contest time!
Yes, it is contest time. I like when I do those voices.
Or is it like giveaway time? Would it be like giveaway time?
Well, I mean, giveaway is like you enter, you get something, but in this case, we're going to have people like do something to get in. I don't know.
Oh, it's a giveaway.
Call it whatever you want.
So let's do good giveaway time.
I hate you so much. But yes, like Robin said, we're having a giveaway instead of a contest. What that entails is until and through September 17th. So we're going to have about 5 weeks, I think. We're going to be running this. If you folks would like to win some free merch in this giveaway, and I'm not exactly sure what Robin is curated for this.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little mix of scary-ish merch, like stickers. We have some coasters, things like that. And we're going to do some creepy stuff. So I have a couple little pins, things like that I'll toss in there, and maybe a book as well. It's going to be like a little package. It's like a little taste of what we normally give to our goodie tier patrons. So kind of cool.
So it's kind of exciting. It's free to enter. All you have to do, and you get an entry for each time you do this, is when we release an episode, comment on that episode on Facebook. So we're going to release it. It'll pop up. It'll have the Facebook post. Comment on there. And what you have to put in the comment is a friend of yours. Tag a friend. So it's like you're going to kind of cram Scarish down their throat just for about 5 weeks. And then click share and share it on your personal page so that your friends can see, hey, this is something I'm into. You folks should check it out. So you're supporting us. You're spreading the word. And we appreciate it. And every time you do that, you're going to get an entry into the contest.
Yep.
At the end of those 5 weeks, we're going to gather all the names for each entry. And I think last time we had people that entered every single time.
Yeah, it was
and
really
wound
cool.
up with like 12 entries. And I think the person who had the most entries actually wound up winning too.
Oh, wow.
So it's something as simple as long as you do it every week. I know some of you folks actually just do this anyways.
Yeah, you guys are so awesome and so supportive, and it warms our hearts.
It does. So like this is just keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to get entries into this giveaway. I almost called it a contest.
So
you can win some Scarish merch, and it'll be a really fun time. Hopefully we can grow a little bit more. We're in an area right now where we really want other listeners, new listeners, to come onto the show, and some of you folks have been taking it upon yourself to just go out there and do that. So as long as you folks are willing to do that, we want to reward you for it.
Yes, so tag a friend and share.
Cool. So that is some fun, exciting news about the August into September giveaway. I'd like to think that this coincides with the start of football season. Maybe that's why this is happening. We're in a very generous mood.
Okay.
But who knows? But I think I'm going first this week, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
I was just thinking about how the Cowboys are hurting me already. So
that's funny.
like...
I'm thinking about how like the Bears went 12-4 last year, and I wore my Trubisky jersey on the live stream, and I was like, the Bears are 2-1. This doesn't happen that often. I just want to wear this before they start getting bad. And then he threw 6 touchdowns the next week. It's because I like blessed him by wearing that jersey live on the air.
Bless.
So pretty excited about it. No one gets that joke. Robin says that at the beginning of every episode when we do mic check. And
Yeah.
you never hear it. But she
You
acted
never
like that
hear
was
it.
something that you guys always hear.
Yeah, I always say that at the beginning of any time we start recording.
As soon as I start recording, I go to the microphones and go check to mine, and she goes bless to hers. So there you go. You guys are in on that joke now, since Robin likes to literally narrowcast to an audience of 1 herself.
I make myself laugh.
So, anyways, we did the recap of last week's episode. This week, I'm not covering anything like hypnosis. I'm instead doing like a ghost story / cryptid. And I've run across it when doing research multiple times. Like I look for like lists of stuff that's like scary stories from blah, 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 blah. And there's a million lists out there, and these keep popping up. And I've done a little bit of research, and I haven't really dug into the backstory, but I've always dismissed it as something that honestly like sounded made up. But I'm going to get into it this week. And so, dear listener, I present to you the Dark Watchers. Now, before I get going, a couple of things. Like, first and foremost, take all this with a grain of salt, like we always say, because this could all be bullshit. Secondly, the name I see associated with Dark Watchers is often referred to as the Dark Watchers of California.
All
so,
right. Is it just in that area?
Yes.
Okay.
These entities are apparently specific to a region. And here's the other thing, too, and this is another reason why I haven't covered this in the past. There isn't a ton of information on them. There's like some stuff that you can dig into, but it's all kind of been covered by people who have done this before, and everyone kind of rehashes each other's stuff. So it's sort of that whole like snake eating its own tail thing, which kind of gets on my nerves, and I kind of tend to avoid those topics and look for something relatively new.
Okay.
So we're going to try and do this a little bit differently than I've seen it done before, but we're going to cover the pertinent and the important stuff. So what are the Dark Watchers? Well, they are essentially tall silhouettes that appear to be in the shape of a human being. So a picture like a shadow, you know?
Like Slender Man, kind of, sort of?
Not exactly. Slender Man looks like a person. This is like a shadow, like a 3D shadow that doesn't have any discernible features that looks like a human being. And aside from that, it looks like they're wearing robes or cowls or cloaks or something that's blowing in the wind. I couldn't help but picture Batman when I first thought of this. And I was like,
where's the trigger?
I was like, you only need to be worried if you're one of those criminals. But they also have been seen frequently holding staves, which is the plural for staffs. And I always want to say staffs, but staves is how you fucking say it.
Okay.
And wearing wide-brimmed hats. So now I have this picture of Batman.
So it's a shadow with a hat?
Batman, it's a shadow, but it's an outline of a shadow that's wearing a hat, wearing a cloak, or holding a staff.
So it's Raiden.
Well, here's the thing. Immediately in my mind, I pictured Vampire Hunter D, which, let's be real, would also be super fucking terrifying, especially if you were a vampire.
Oh my gosh, you know what Vampire Hunter D is?
Goddamn right I do.
Oh,
I
you're
watched
like
that
a
shit.
million times cuter.
Oh, thank you. Actually, it's funny. I don't tell this story barely at all, but when I was down in Florida when I was like 16, it was like senior trip or something me and my friends did. We went to a comic book store and there was this bust like on sale clearance, and it was Vampire Hunter D, like from the tits up. And he had his super long hat and his super long sword or scythe. I forget what he has. But he had a super long weapon, and I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to go get my money from the hotel, and we're going to come back and buy it. And I came back like 10 minutes later, and someone had bought
gone?
it.
No.
Every comic book store, every place I go to that has figurines since then, for the last 17, 18 years, I have looked for this thing. I've never seen it again.
Have you Googled it?
I mean, I don't want to spoil it. Like, this is my like serendipity moment. Like, it needs to come back to me type of thing.
I see what you're
for me to
saying.
know that
Okay,
it's like
okay.
truly mine. But anyways, picture this on the ridge if you were in like a mountainous region. And I would like to point out that there is no reference whatsoever to these things having red eyes. So they're clearly not evil, because everyone knows that if something is evil, it has red eyes. It's just the dead giveaway.
It's holding a staff. It must be wise.
Exactly. It's going to give you a quest if you can get to it. So they range in height, and this is where I think people start to get scared. Anywhere from 7 to 15 feet.
What?
So that's super tall. So they are towering, and they're just watching you. And on top of that, they show up on the ridges at very specific times, in particular, 2 time periods, dusk and dawn, which is not shocking, I think.
I was going to say, like, that's not surprising. Okay.
Okay, so the first place my head goes when I read up on this legend is there must be a trick of the light causing this to happen. Because if it's dusk and dawn and it's happening in this specific
it's like
region,
the change in the lighting.
Yeah, that's what I was definitely thinking. Or maybe it's something more rational, like it has to do with the beginning and end of the day when light is being extinguished or returning to life, and it grants this brief window for us to peer into this other world where these beings are actually watching us.
Okay.
Something rational like that,
Okay.
right? So the Dark Watchers are said to only be seen in the Santa Lucia Mountains. So this is a specific region that you can find them if you're looking.
Where is it?
It's in California. I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Which, as we all know, the Santa Lucia Mountains, everyone except for Robin knows, it's in the San Luis Obispo County. And it has that mountain range in particular has 4 major peaks: Junipero Serra Peak, Cone Peak, Ventana Double Cone, and Mount Carmel. Duh.
They're so cute names.
Seriously, though, this is a mountain range in California that is super close to the coastline. So I did a little bit of research. They talked about the weather. It's kind of damp sometimes, gets a lot of fog, a lot of mist. What were you going to say?
I'm just like imagining if you opened an ice cream shop in the area, be making special ice cream
called
orders.
The Ventana Double Cone?
Yeah, just be like,
or
this is the
Cone
Ventana
Peak?
Double Cone. Yeah, how cute would that? Do it. Someone do it.
Or it's like a sundae and it's
You're
covered
welcome.
with caramel and you call it the Mount Carmel.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure someone's done this or someone's thought of it and just hasn't done it yet. So something interesting too about this region is Hearst Castle is built there. Not going to get sidetracked on this, but just a little bit. It was built by a super rich guy named William Randolph Hearst, which some of you folks might be familiar with. Any movie buffs would probably know. The movie Citizen Kane is based on him. His granddaughter actually was Patty Hearst, for those of you who are a little bit older or true crime buffs. Patty Hearst was kidnapped She was kidnapped by this group of folks, and then eventually she showed up on like surveillance footage, and it appeared that she was like participating in a robbery rather than like being taken to this. It was like a bank robbery. And it was a big thing to do back in the 70s about her. Her daughter is William Randolph Hearst's granddaughter. Her name is Lydia. She is married to Chris Hardwick. So
shut up.
That's who Lydia Hearst is.
No way.
So the castle this guy built, which is gorgeous, and it's like on this ridge that looks out at the ocean. It really gives you an idea of the fact that this place has, I don't know, a certain appeal to it that people want to go see. But that said, it is still kind of creepy. And it's been that way for a very long time. Like before California was California. Like the Spanish settlers to the area also supposedly saw these enormous silhouettes watching them from the ridges, and they dubbed them Los Vigilantes Oscuros, which I know I didn't say correctly, but that's as good as I can do. And of course that translates to the Dark Watchers. So
nice.
Now by all accounts, all these things do is watch you. So there aren't any actual accounts of someone being accosted by the Dark Watchers or disappearing or anything like that.
Okay.
Or if they disappeared, they didn't know anyone and no one cared that they were gone. And I can't imagine that there was many people that were in that situation. So we're just going to go with they're benign. They're observers.
So they're like Santa Claus.
Santa Claus interacts. Santa Claus brings
but
you...
he watches you.
He brings you coal. I mean, maybe they're watching people for Santa Claus in this particular area. Well, I don't know if the Santa Claus theory has been fleshed out yet, but I'm sure we'll get there. So it's funny, too, because they're even more antisocial than you think. Like, it's said that if one were to approach them, they simply vanish. Folks even say they stare directly at it, they don't approach them, and they blink, and then they're gone. And most accounts state that the individual is just absolutely racked with a feeling of, like, intense terror when they see these things.
Even though they're not actually bad.
Well, that's the thing. How do you know if they're bad or not? Because they don't have red eyes and they don't come after you? They're giant and they're staring at you. So I think people just get freaked out. And because of that, I think people associate the Dark Watchers with like beings of evil. But it also might have something to do with the fact that most of us would freeze up and have our buttholes go into 100% puckered mode if you saw a 15-foot shadow staring at you.
Yes, yeah.
It could be the happiest shadow ever. It could have 2 scoops of Raisin Bran, and if you just gave it a chance, it would give them to you. But you're terrified of it, and it's just going to disappear.
I'd be like, get that Raisin Bran away from me.
It's from an old commercial. I think it's hilarious. You just shit all over that cereal super hardcore when I was giving them free advertising. So the Dark Watchers have been covered by so many different media outlets, and the information is all fairly similar. Like I said, snake eating its own tail. You can't really tell if like they're reporting on actual things they found or they're reporting on something else someone wrote.
Okay.
I found multiple websites that straight up copy pasted someone else's findings, like 5 pages deep.
A lot of things on the internet do that.
It's so frustrating when you see that, so you try and trace it back to the original source so you can kind of give it credit. And I did that a little bit. So there's a website called mysteriousuniverse.org, and they have a solid write-up on the Dark Watchers. And some of it is the same stuff you can find everywhere else, but they also have several eyewitness accounts, 2 of which stood out to me as really friggin' creepy. So I'm going to read those to you. There's only 2 of them. Again, if you want to read the rest of them, the other ones are kind of short, but it's mysteriousuniverse.org, and they have an article on the Dark Watchers. So shout out to them because this is some good shit. But the only part I really want to take from them here is the eyewitness account. So the first is from 2011, and it goes like this. Many, many years ago, I was with a friend driving through a dirt field here in Moreno Valley near Alessandro, probably didn't say that right, in parentheses, the old east part, near what I believe were abandoned barns, that I always had heard were haunted when my friend's car broke down. In parentheses, could have been a coincidence, it was a beat-up Volkswagen Bug. It was dusk at best, and there was no way we were going to make it out of the field before it was pitch black, and instead of chancing getting lost and or hurt in the dark, we decided to sleep in the car and set out in the morning to get help to tow the car. It was way before the days of everyone having cell phones and quick help. As we were killing time in the pitch black now, which I find interesting because it's not dusk.
Okay.
It was dusk. Now they're in the pitch black, though. In the pitch black, we were hanging out inside and outside of the car, killing time, sharing smokes, and we started to distinctly see what looked like black shadows evenly distributed, completely encircling us. They did not move. They stayed motionless but were of significant size, and based on the distance, I would say at least the size of a small car like the Bug we ourselves were in. Whatever these were seemed hunched over, perhaps kneeling.
Okay.
Time passed. They never moved. And though we walked around the car and got in and out of the car to see if what we were seeing was some sort of optical illusion, we couldn't explain or discredit what we were seeing. To this day, it racks my brain. So that's the first eyewitness account of someone seeing the Dark Watchers.
That's weird that they surrounded them. But
It's
I wonder
super
how
weird.
far away from them it was.
Yeah, and I wonder about the elevation a lot in this too. So it's like, and that's funny too, because like I feel like if someone saw this, it wouldn't be so casual as like, oh, we're stuck here.
Right.
Like I think most people would freak the fuck out.
Oh, yeah.
Like they would absolutely be terrified. And I would like to point out that on this one, like these things didn't disappear, you know? Like usually they say like you look at it for a little while and if you approach it or you blink, all of a sudden it disappears, but that doesn't happen here. And if they're walking around the car, at some point they probably walked in the direction of one of these things. And at least in this story, they don't say that this thing blinked out of existence at all. And that's the other thing too. It's like we only really know of these behaviors based off of eyewitness accounts. We don't know if this is an occasional behavior or like a hard rule that they have to follow. You know what I mean?
Because we don't know their actual...
Because we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know at all. And like, when you try and assign these rules to things, I think you're setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
Like, do they obey these rules like the Boos in Mario when you turn around and you look at them and they freeze and they cover their eyes?
Yeah.
Because they have to do that. Or do they sort of obey them like the ghosts in Pac-Man when you eat that light bulb and now you can kill them? Like, yeah, they avoid you, but every now and then they still kind of move towards you.
I was so confused. I was like, you can eat a light bulb in Pac-Man?
Yeah, the little, like, big dot. Like, there's all the dots and then there's the
They're
big
not light
dot.
bulbs, though, are they?
I always thought they were light bulbs. For whatever reason in my head, it made sense to me that they were light bulbs.
Oh, okay.
So,
cute.
What I'm trying to say here is we don't really know whether or not they have to follow these rules that were set forth by who the F knows. So the second eyewitness account that I'm going to read to you is actually from 2013. And this one goes like this. I remember one day my friend and I were coming back from Los Angeles. We passed the San Luis Obispo Reservoir, and as we drove on the road, I saw something at a distance down at the end of the mountain. It was a really big human figure, but it wasn't. It had a black cape, kind of like the Grim Reaper, and was leaning over holding a staff at a, quote, puddle of water, or so it's what it seemed like at a distance.
Maybe it was a puddle of mud.
I hate you so much. It was in daytime too, so I could identify that it was not a person. Even in mid-light, he was very black and reminded me of a raven. I told my friend that was driving to look over at the mountains, and surprisingly, she was also able to see a glimpse of it. I asked her what she saw without giving her my details, and she said exactly what I saw. She only looked at it for about 5 seconds, but she was able to see it. She almost lost control of the car, too, when she looked away at it, and I begged her to go back and see it, but she was very tired of driving already. The Dark Watchers are real.
That's crazy.
That's the thing, though. In this particular case, it literally could have just been someone. You know what I mean?
In the mountains, just
yeah,
standing there.
And like you might not see like a cameraman like taking a photo of someone who's out there, maybe shooting a picture of like what a Dark Watcher would look like.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, those are two pretty creepy experiences that I think we can all kind of picture ourselves in. And again, this thing did not disappear like in the legend that it's reported widely around the internet.
Right.
So apparently they don't know the rules that the internet is saying about them, so they're just
you believe
making
everything you read on the internet.
Exactly. What's wrong with them? So it definitely seems like these things are following guidelines and not so much rules. Plus, this person said it happening during the day, and they said it was like kind of failing light, or however they put it. It was mid-light. So I do find it interesting that there's eyewitness accounts, and there's a lot, and I feel like the more this gets reported on, the more eyewitness sightings come in.
Yeah.
I think it's just the nature that people see things once they hear about it. And when you talk about something creepy like the Dark Watchers, I think you're just going to find that happens a lot. That said, there's actually been a few authors who have written about the Dark Watchers.
Really?
Yeah. Robinson Jeffers referred to the Dark Watchers in a poem of his in 1937. I'm not going to read you these excerpts because literally every other person who's ever covered this reads the excerpts word for word.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what is written about. And in that poem, this guy sees a Dark Watcher and approaches it, and when he gets to it, the shadow takes on a face that is actually his own face. So he's basically staring at a reflection of himself before it disappears. So when I read that, I of course pictured that scene in Last Jedi
where
Rey goes into the cave, which is filled with the dark side, to find out who her parents are, and she leaves disappointed, just like the rest of us. Side note, just kidding. I'm not bashing Last Jedi or anything. I'm just saying, let's be real. When she went into that cave, we were all really excited to find out who her parents were. And she walked out and it was just like, oh, shit, never mind. So we still don't know, for those of you who haven't seen it. No spoilers. So the other author who wrote about the Dark Watchers is a guy named John Steinbeck, who some of you might have heard of. I know of him, of course, because where I grew up, we had to read of Mice and Men. He also wrote Grapes of Wrath, which I didn't have to read, but a lot of you folks did. So he wrote about the Dark Watchers in a short story called Flight. And it was very quick. It's a very brief part. And basically, a character looks around and sees a Dark Watcher on a ridge watching him and, like, acknowledges that it's a Dark Watcher to himself and is like, oh shit, like no, don't look that way, keep your eyes forward.
I'm just imagining this John Steinbeck book with those exact words.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that I just did verbatim what happens in that scene, in that short. It's beautiful writing, and it must be why Steinbeck like totally won the Pulitzer in 1940 for Grapes of Wrath. And in case you didn't know, he also won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1962.
Holy cow.
Pretty impressive. I'd also like to point out, and this is just from stuff that I've read about Steinbeck before, he wins the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1962 for like his lifetime of work. And like everyone in the United States of America, which is where he's from, basically celebrated by shitting all over him and saying he didn't fucking deserve it.
What?
So no matter how good you are at something, there's going to be haters. And sometimes if you're the best, there's going to be a lot of them. I just want to remind everyone of that. It doesn't matter what people think of you. Like, I got so annoyed, like, rehashing this stuff about Steinbeck. Because I was like, I can't believe people were so mean about it. Like, they called him a hack. They said his, like, writing was, like, 10th rate. It was some really nasty shit. And, like, this dude just won the Nobel Prize in Literature. And they were just all so mean about it.
This really wise woman, I think her name was Taylor Swift.
I hate you
she
so
said,
much.
Like, haters gonna hate. Hate.
Yeah, I got you.
Just shake it off.
So, all right. These two authors wrote about the Dark Watchers, and they referenced that there were creatures that dated back to the times of the Native Americans who were indigenous to this area, which are the Chumash. I think I'm saying that right.
Chumash?
Chumash. So, why am I not hitting on the Chumash more? Well, mainly because despite it being stated by someone that there was records of this, there really isn't any written records, like, at all. The thing that is important to keep in mind with this, though, with something like the Dark Watchers and the story that's supposedly passed down through this Native American people, is that although there's not a written record, a lot of things that were passed down through the Native American culture were passed down orally. So it's not 100% outrage, they made this up because we can't find a written record of it. A lot of stuff was just passed on through stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So folks have done studies on the Chumash, though, and we have records of the work that was done and a lot of the folklore that they pulled out of these things that they were doing research on, but nothing that directly references a Dark Watcher or something that appears like a Dark Watcher. They have some of the same stuff that overlaps, like creatures and spirits. They have skinwalkers, stuff like that, but not specifically Dark Watchers in this specific region. But you know what? And I thought of this when I was doing this research. That doesn't really matter, like, at all. Like, when it comes to something like this, I think it's really interesting that people focus so much on confirming whether or not it's ancient or old or confirmed by a society who came before us. Like, if it doesn't, like, does that mean it's not real? Like, sometimes shit just starts happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, something triggers an event or time goes by.
One drop of blood lands on a symbol.
Or the planets are all in alignment and something tears a fabric in reality. Like, you don't always have to say, like, this has always been this way, therefore it must be true. You know, sometimes it can just start. So that said, what do I think? Well, I think, honestly, it's probably a combination of a few things. First, we've talked about this environment, and I think it has a sort of ambiance that is what is called spooky.
Aww.
And I know you love that. And whether these things are real, having a person on edge definitely sets them up to see something, whether it is real or imaginary. You know what I mean? If someone's entering a spooky environment and they're creeped out, they're more likely to see something whether or not it's even there, you know? You're just sort of seeing things around every corner. So here's the thing. There is something that is called the Brocken Spectre. It's an actual explained phenomenon, but to the folks that see it, it can be incredibly scary.
Okay.
So the conditions have to be just right. The sun has to be shining just behind the person, typically on or near a ridge or a peak, especially in a mountainous range like we have here. Fog or mist needs to be present for this to be like at its maximum effect, which it is frequently in this area. And basically what happens is the light from the sun projects the person's shadow, which you can imagine, like anyone who's ever seen the shadow of a plane, and it projects it like on an even playing field or a little bit above or a little bit below.
Okay.
But it stretches out really, really far, and especially if you have fog or mist or foliage, your shadow basically gets picked up by all of these things, and it appears as like a giant silhouette of a person.
What are the odds, though, that said person would have a hat and a...
That's what's really creepy about it. But this is the other thing that I think is very interesting. When you have something like fog or mist or foliage that's picking up a shadow, especially in failing light, those things move. So it looks like the shadow's moving, not in correlation with the person.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, that's a different entity than you because it seems like it's shifting.
Because the fog is moving.
Exactly. So what's also really interesting is like the fog is moving, or if there's like raindrops coming down because it's misting, when the shadow gets picked up by that, even though it's like very briefly, it throws off your depth perception when you're looking at it. And when you have your depth perception messed with, it causes you a sense of unease.
Really?
Your eyes can't focus. Your eyes can't tell how far away something is. So it's like suddenly it's close, suddenly it's far.
Because I've had this feeling before. I can totally relate.
It's almost like vertigo in a little, and like, at least for me, it's almost like vertigo where it's like all of a sudden you don't have your equilibrium. You can't quite judge distance and you're like, you feel lightheaded.
Yeah.
So I think it's very interesting that this is like kind of the perfect environment for this to happen, where there's ridges, the sun setting here, it's on the coastline, so there's going to be moisture in the air. And a bunch of the pictures that I found for this particular region, there's fog. So
interesting.
I think that does lend itself to this theory. People also talk about the fact that the wind blows through this mountain range, and they've measured it before, and some of the frequencies come in below the normal limit that a human being is able to hear, and some of those frequencies can cause someone a sense of unease. So this environment is basically set up to throw this at you, to really cause you to see something. But here's the thing. How do we know that all the things I just described aren't the perfect environmental ingredients to just pierce the veil between worlds? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I just explained something scientifically proven to be a phenomenon that can cause you to see a shadow that in fact has a halo effect if the sun's lined up perfectly, which I will show on our Instagram because they're amazing pictures.
Which is funny because I totally have something in mind where I'm like, we have to post this on the Instagram.
Okay, cool. So you guys are going to have to check out our Instagram this week. And it really does sound to me, too, like the statistics or like the implications within a supernatural episode where it's like there's a monster of the week and you can only kill it at dawn or dusk, and Dean and Sam have to go blah, 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 and one of them gets knocked out and the other one saves the day. Also, there's a pretty girl or a dog. Like, that really seems to line up with a supernatural theme. So it's like there's all these other legends that have these specific ways where something can cross over or you can see it. So maybe that's just the case.
But if it doesn't hurt anyone so far.
Yeah. That's why they're called Dark Watchers. They're literally giant shadow figures who just watch you. So they're creepy. I get that. But, I mean, they're kind of benign.
They're just trying to judge if you're naughty or you're nice.
That's hilarious. I hate you so much. We can try and understand what's going on here, but I still find it very curious that despite moving, those two eyewitness stories didn't have their Dark Watchers disappear, you know? Because if it is the light playing with them and it's casting a shadow on something and it's your particular shadow, if you move, it should disturb it. That's why when people approach it, I was like, oh yeah, when people move, they move from the source of light, so their shadow obviously disappears. They don't see it anymore. But in those two eyewitness accounts, they stayed. They shifted out of their spot, and the Dark Watcher stayed, which is super creepy to me. So I think the only thing that we can do when it comes to the Dark Watchers is go there the next time we're in California and try and find out for ourselves.
It sounds like it's far away from LA.
San Luis Obispo is not that far. Like, straight up. Like, it's pretty close by. I used to, like, deal with all of the utilities in California. It's close enough where if we're going to medieval times, I think we can totally stop and check out this forest.
Right.
Maybe visit Hearst Castle if they'll let us in. Like, I'll hit up What's-His-Face on Instagram and be like, yo, bro, like, can you have your wife let us in?
Oh, my goodness.
So, seriously, though, I really want to go. And if we are heading out there for medieval times, I think it would be really cool to stop by and just see what the place looks like. But anyways, that's everything I got. So that, my friends, is the legend or the story of the Dark Watchers.
Thanks for that.
No problem. Thank you.
So it's my turn to cover my topic. And this week I'm going to cover what's known as the miracle of the sun or the miracle of Fatima. And nature does weird things, y'all. And there's going to be history knowledge nuggets in here too, so strap in for a pretty mild ride.
I hate you so much.
No air sickness bags necessary.
Is that why you asked about air sickness
Yes.
bags while you were doing your script?
Yes.
Like, are those a thing? Like, yeah,
No.
still...
No, that was not my question. My question was, do they still give those out? Because I've never seen a single person use one.
Certain airlines still have them in their back pouches. Like, I'm not sure about all of them, but they definitely still exist, yes.
Yeah, because I have never seen a single person use it. Maybe when I was younger and flights weren't as nice and smooth, but these days I feel like people just don't throw up when they fly.
I mean, knock on wood.
Knock
Let's hope
on
not.
wood. Yeah, I hope not. All right. So on October 13, 1917, a large group of people gathered in Fatima, Portugal, because, get this, children had some prophecies of something extraordinary that was going to happen. And in the spring of 1917, these 3 Catholic shepherd children, Lucia dos Santos and her cousins Jacinta and Francisco Marto, living near Fatima, claimed to have seen apparitions of an angel at the Cova da Iria. Then beginning in May of 1917, those apparitions began including the Virgin Mary, who the children described as the Lady of the Rosary. And they described her as, quote, the lady more brilliant than the sun,
That's
end
so
quote.
sweet. That's such a nice way to describe someone.
So now a little note to add, something going on during this period of time that you might be familiar with
World War
is,
I?
yeah, this little thing called World War I, also known as the Great War. And,
or the war to end all wars.
But it was not at all great, so big misnomer there. It lasted from July 28th, 1914 to November 11th, 1918. It was understandably one of the largest wars in history, as well as one of the deadliest. So these 3 children claimed that these apparitions told them a prophecy that prayer would end the Great War, and that on October 13th, 1917, the lady would reveal her identity and perform a miracle, quote, so that all may believe, end quote. And you can imagine that when media outlets picked this up and started running with it, believers made the pilgrimage to visit the area to be there for the occasion.
I still think it's crazy that even in 1917, the media was just spreading stories like wildfire throughout the world, like just by playing a game of telephone. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They really didn't have sources aside from hearing
Were there
it.
telephones? There were telephones in 1917.
I don't know. Quick Googling. 1876, patent went to Alexander Graham Bell. There you go.
Yeah. All right. So people wanted the war to end. They wanted the people in their lives to stop dying.
But it was so great.
It was so great. So great. It was like giving all these people hope, saying by praying they would end this huge, horrible thing that was going on. And on the other side of that coin, there was the religious controversy of the whole thing. And their prophecies were criticized by religious authorities.
And these were children prophesying.
These were children.
Things,
these
right?
were 3 little children.
Wow.
Yeah.
People are assholes, I'm just saying.
It's understandable that not everyone's going to agree with any one view, but these people kind of took it to an extreme. A provisional administrator took the children into custody briefly, believing that what these kids were saying must have come from some political standpoint.
Wow.
These are children, okay? And I'm not
Pray
saying...
and stop people from killing each other. They're like, who do you work for? With like a light in their face.
But it's just mind-blowing to me that they would take such an extreme standpoint on these children, just saying like, just hope for this, pray for this, and it'll happen.
It's like the 2 things that could be going on here. 1, these kids are making shit up because they want people to pray because they want this war to end. Or 2, they're seeing angels and the Virgin Mary who are saying, pray so this stupid war can end. And these people, either way, the way they act, are just acting like assholes.
And I'm not saying, though, that children can't be used for political purposes.
Right.
But I mean, come on. At the time, the first Portuguese Republic was in power, having been established in 1910, so it was around for a while now.
Ah, yes.
Yes, that republic. So the republic were secularists. Is that how you say it? Secularists?
Sure, that sounded good.
All right. And believed in disestablishing the power of the Catholic Church. So they came in and they were like, Catholic Church is gone. We need to get rid of the power that they have over this area. We're not going to do all this belief stuff that you're doing. And So having these visions of the Virgin Mary and all these prophecies, getting people to flock back to Catholicism didn't really float well with the government. That's why they took these kids and they're like, stop this. Like, you can't do this. And they weren't picking up what these kids were putting down. They were just like, no, we're not having it. And they looked at what these kids were saying as direct opposition to their government.
You know what the kids should have done? I've learned this in a movie recently. I'm pretty sure it was a documentary. They should have leaned forward and whispered, "Hail Hydra."
Oh my God.
And then they would have been fine.
You know what's funny is we're flying back from Chicago and they played Endgame.
I'm so pissed about this.
And we've already seen Endgame. We've seen what happens. So we were just so mad that they ended the movie like 30 minutes early.
They ended the movie with Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, and Thanos fighting over the gauntlet. And like there was like 20 minutes left in the flight. And they just raised the TVs and they're like, we're going to be landing in Chicago in about 20 minutes. So fuck you guys.
Yeah, I was so
like,
annoyed.
Really, dude? Like that would have lined up perfectly to us landing, but thanks for that.
Anyways, yes. So kids, opposition to the government. Cue Green Day song here.
Viva la Resistance.
Now all I'm thinking is the South Park movie.
I know. I fucking love that movie so much.
The prophecies were a sensation. According to a local Portuguese newspaper, O Século, it's estimated that around 30,000 to 40,000 people were present. A lawyer by the name of Dr. Jose Almeida Garrett estimated that there were about 100,000. So I imagine it's hard to calculate in numbers of that magnitude.
When it's that substantial,
Right.
You're just like,
It was a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of people here.
And we'll post pictures of the crowd on our Instagram because it is absolutely unbelievable. I didn't actually believe it was that many people until I was looking at pictures, and I was just mind blown by how many people there were.
I'm excited to see this picture because I have not seen it.
So Lucia dos Santos, one of the children who claimed to see the apparitions, went on to become a nun.
Wow.
And she wrote 6 memoirs during her lifetime, and they've actually been translated into English and are available in book form if any of you are curious about these kinds of things. And what's interesting about her is that there have been steps made towards declaring her sainthood.
I mean, if you witness the Virgin Mary, like if you see a miracle, like you're supposed to perform 3, right? You can't be canonized.
There's like a whole bunch
3.
of different things, but the first step is being labeled a servant of God, which she has.
Right.
So in 2017, they were like, this stuff has happened. You are a servant of God. This is post-mortem, obviously, because she died in 2005.
I was going to say, she'd be 102 right now.
Yeah, so
if
she died
was born,
in...
Actually, she'd be way older. Never mind.
Okay. She died in 2005. In 2008, the Pope was just like, hey, we know we're supposed to wait 5 years after your death for you to be someone that people can pray to, that you'll come and visit them and help them with their problems.
Seems like a weird waiting period.
I know.
I get it for the Hall of Fame. Like, you might unretire and go back into the NBA, but it's or the NFL or whatever. But, like, for people to pray to you, that's just like, hang on. Like, they're going to be prayed to for eons, but you got to give them 5 years of peace before they get back into the service.
Apparently, it's supposed to be 5 years before they can come back from heaven to help people. You know what I mean?
They get 5 years to chill.
It's weird. So anyway, she was made a servant of God in 2017. And, you know, I went to Catholic school and I don't remember learning any of this process or about things like that at all. I don't remember any of that stuff. So it's kind of interesting little tidbits that I learned while researching this stuff, which is kind of cool. But in the 4th edition of her memoirs that were written in 1941, Lucia recalls that on her 3rd visit to the Cova da Iria, I'm pronouncing it way off, but bear with me, on July 13th, 1917, she asked the lady to tell them who she was and to perform a miracle so that all would believe. And the lady told her that they should continue to come each month until October when the miracle would occur. So on October 13th is when the event happened.
Okay.
Reports of what actually happened that day vary a whole bunch. Many witnesses claim that after it rained, the dark clouds broke, revealing a sun that looked like an opaque spinning disc. And it was duller than the everyday sun, which, by the way, if you didn't know, you shouldn't really look directly at the sun. Or is that just an eclipse? I don't know.
No, you're not supposed to look at the
sun period. Okay. Just protect your eyeballs. Anyway, this sun supposedly casts multicolored lights across the area, over the people, over the clouds, everything. It was like Rainbow Central. Supposedly, the sun made a beeline towards Earth before it zigzagged back to where it came from. And witnesses claimed that their previously rain-soaked clothes had become suddenly completely dry. Even the wet and muddy ground had dried.
Maybe it's the proximity of a giant ball of fire drying everyone off really fast. Do you think it came close to dump 2 scoops of raisins on somebody? I'm going back to this because it's the sun that does this in this Raisin Bran commercial.
I remember the commercial you're talking about.
You probably remember the spoof from Family Guy rather than the actual commercial, but still, I'm glad we're on the same page now.
I totally see the commercial you're talking about. Also, come on, sun, give me something other than like Raisin Bran.
Do you think when the sun was coming, they go, "Here comes the sun"? Do, 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 do.
How do you say that in Portuguese?
I don't know.
Not everyone saw the sun the same way, though. So not everyone saw it dancing across the sky. Some only saw the colors that it cast across everything. Some believers never even saw anything at all. Apparently, the only picture of the sun taken during that event shows nothing out of the ordinary. The children who first claimed the prophecy also reported seeing a panorama of visions. So they saw Jesus. They saw Our Lady of Sorrows, which is what Virgin Mary is referred to in relation to her sorrows in life. And she's often depicted with daggers and long knives piercing her and bleeding. Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which is another title for Mary in the Carmelite order.
Wow, Mount Carmel again, huh?
Yeah, weird. Mount Carmel is spelled differently, though. It's not delicious.
Is it spelled Carmel?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Oh, snap!
That's weird.
What are the odds? Okay, and then Saint Joseph as well. And this panorama of visions it was just all blessing the people. And I know this is really weird, but I just imagine them all over the clouds as giant busts like from chest up, posed like Salt Bay, like blessings for all.
I hate you. When you said busts in the clouds, I immediately, of course, thought of Mufasa.
Oh.
But you turned it into Salt Bay.
I just imagine like the arm up, like blessings on everyone. Anyway, so reports of the events were compiled by Father John de Marchi, an Italian Catholic priest and researcher, and he spent 7 years in Fatima between 1943 and 1950 and conducted thorough research and interviews. He published his report in 1952 titled The Immaculate Heart. Here's just a few witness descriptions included in his books, so he did print a few of them on the event. Dr. Dominguez Pinto Coelho wrote in Ordem, which is a Catholic newspaper, "The sun at one moment, surrounded with scarlet flame, at another, aureoled in yellow and deep purple, seemed to be in an exceedingly swift and whirling movement, at times appearing to be loosened from the sky and to be approaching the earth, strongly radiating heat."
So yeah, it sounds like the sun...
a hot moving ball of fire.
...was on its way to Earth, which is not normal.
What's interesting is they say the sun was ringed in different colors. So I don't think I've ever seen the sun ringed in different colors.
I've seen the sun ringed. I've never seen the sun ringed in different colors, though.
Really? You've seen it?
It can happen.
What?
Yeah. It happens after like rainstorms and stuff like that. I remember it happened. My mom was like telling me about what it is. And I cannot remember for the life of me like what it's called. I think it's like the corona effect or something like that. Where it just depends on how the light is shining through and you have to be in a specific spot.
And then you pop a lime in it?
Yeah, exactly. You pop a lime down into it, you turn it upside down, and then you drink it. And there you go. Find your beach.
Yes. I can't believe you remember that.
I fucking hate Corona, too. I can't believe I just did a commercial for Corona.
Okay, anyway. So, oh my God.
It's Miller time. I'm pretty sure that's what everyone shouted when they saw this happening.
Okay, so, oh my God. So Dr. Almeida Garrett, the guy that claimed 100,000 people were in attendance, stated, "The sun's disk did not remain immobile," which means it was moving. "This was not the sparkling of a heavenly body, for it spun around on itself in a mad whirl, when suddenly a clamor was heard from all the people. The sun, whirling, seemed to loosen itself from the firmament and advance threateningly upon earth, as if to crush us with its huge fiery weight."
Hey, what are you looking at? And then it went back to where it's supposed to be.
The sensation during those moments was terrible. I'm imagining like that Zelda game where the moon's coming down, crashing to Earth.
Majora's Mask,
Yeah.
one of the greatest games of all time.
Yeah, but it's the sun instead. And someone just used the
Song of Time?
Yeah.
They just rewound that shit. Like, get back in your spots.
Anyway, okay. So a priest, Dr. Manuel Firmigao, stated, "As if like a bolt from the blue, the clouds were wrenched apart, and the sun at its zenith appeared in all its splendor. It began to revolve vertiginously on its axis, like the most magnificent fire wheel that could be imagined, taking on all the colors of the rainbow and sending forth multicolored flashes of light, producing the most astounding effect. This sublime and incomparable spectacle, which was repeated 3 distinct times, lasted for about 10 minutes. The immense multitude, overcome by the evidence of such a tremendous prodigy, threw themselves on their knees." So they're saying, like, everybody saw this, then everybody fell to their knees and were like, praise Jesus.
Right. I mean, if you saw this and it was a bunch of people, especially if you were waiting for a miracle on that specific day, I think a lot of people would freak out.
Yeah. Which is probably why a lot of the people that witnessed all this stuff as kids became nuns.
Right.
They became priests. And it's crazy because I kept seeing a lot of this happen where it's a quote of something they said about what they experienced as a child, and it's them being interviewed as adults and they're priests or nuns. And it's just so mind-blowing because it makes you want to be like, I believe.
Right. Immediately you're like, I need to get more aligned with the dude who can make that happen because the sun just came at me, bro.
It just came at me, bro. It had like shades on and everything. All right. Now, it seems like a lot of religious individuals are the ones that wrote these things or claimed these grandiose things. There's even a shrine erected near the site in Fatima, which has become kind of a pilgrimage site for thousands of people. The Catholic Church itself declared the event was of, quote-unquote, supernatural character in 1930. Then Pope Pius XII approved the Fatima apparitions in 1940. He claimed to have witnessed the same miracle of the sun while he was walking in the Vatican Gardens on October 30th, 1950 at 4 p.m., when he began to see the miracle. He also witnessed it on the 31st and November 1st, and then again on November 8th. So he was just like, I'm seeing miracles all over the place. He wrote these instances of what he saw on notes that were discovered in 2008 that are now on display at the Vatican.
Wow. So he didn't actually tell anyone about it. He just wrote it down.
Well, he did. He told a bunch of people, but only within the small circle within the Vatican.
They didn't like make a formal announcement.
No. Yeah. The colors thing kind of leads me personally to believe that it has something to do with rain and sun creating some type of prism type thing, like how rainbows are created, because they did say it was raining prior to that happening.
If they freaked out about this, can you imagine how much they would have lost their shit if they saw a double rainbow?
The double rainbow all the way across the sky. Have you ever watched those?
No idea what that is.
Oh my gosh. It's the same people that turned the Hide Your Kids, Hide Your Wife into a song. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that for
sure.
sure.
It's the same thing. It's a double rainbow song. You have to listen to it. It's so good. Okay. The rest of it just isn't easy to explain away, though. Even scientists have discussed the limits of scientific explanations for the event. And scientists do claim that the sun never actually moved, since observatories at the time never caught any actual movement of the sun.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But
realistically, if the sun did move towards the Earth in like minute distances,
it would have been catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only would the gravitational effects have just destroyed the planet, but I'm pretty sure it would have just burst into flames outright. So,
So a priest and professor named Stanley L. Jakib does believe that there was some type of divine intervention that brought a myriad of natural meteorological events together at that exact moment for something so miraculous to have happened.
So explainable scientific phenomenon, but that all align in such a specific way, especially with this prophecy that it happened on this date.
Where it had to be divine intervention.
Yeah. I think that is the best description of what happens when it comes to stuff like miracles. One day I'm going to cover other stuff like the collapsing of the walls of Jericho and stuff like that, and the theories behind that. I don't want to get too deep into it, but yeah, I love that description.
A man named Kevin McClure wrote that because people were anticipating something to do with the sun to happen, thanks to the prophecies of the children, people who visited the Cova de Iria simply saw what they wanted to see. So they stared at the sun, and it just, whatever they thought was going to happen is what their minds kind of processed.
That's why the visions were different for each person.
Yes.
I see that too.
Professor of physics, Augusta Meeson, suggests that what those at the event experienced was a result of prolonged staring at the sun. It really isn't good to look directly at the sun. It really comes down to lots of people claiming optical effects and meteorological phenomena. Whether this is a miracle or not is up to you folks to believe. Like we always say, it's your prerogative. If you want to look into it, please do. I think it's really interesting because it's ruled out. They've ruled that it's not mass hysteria. It's impossible because there were so many people there. A lot of scientists and researchers have stated that what the witnesses saw are what they actually experienced. It's just how they experienced it that's up for debate. So how it happened, like how their minds processed it and saw those visions and things like that. It's not easily explainable, and that's what makes the whole thing scary-ish.
I hate you. I will say, though, I find this absolutely fascinating. This is probably one of my favorite things we've ever covered on the show. And it's just so bizarre because even if you believe that none of it was real.
I want to believe.
I hate you. Even if you believe that none of it was real and the kids saying that they saw these things led to the media fanning the flames, led to people showing up, led to them seeing something. Well, that's the thing about prophecies is that by speaking it, you might have just actually caused it to happen.
Right.
So whether or not you believe it was real, the prophecy was actually fulfilled, which is bizarre when you think about it. And it reminds me of Master Oogway, who says in Kung Fu Panda, a man often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it. Because after he tells Master Shifu, yo,
you're so cute,
that dude's going to break out, he doubles the guard, he doubles everything in the prison, and that action is what leads to him escaping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the kids, by saying this is going to happen, by kicking off the prophecy, is actually what caused it to happen. Versus if they found out it was going to happen and didn't say anything, and then it likely would not, or I shouldn't say likely would not have happened, but that many people would definitely not have experienced it.
Right.
And if that was the case, then absolutely no one would believe it. Like we wouldn't even be talking about it right now.
Right.
So it's just fascinating from every angle you can look at this. Whether you're skeptical, whether you're a true believer, it is awesome. So good job. Good work.
Thanks.
So fun stuff. That was episode 88. So we're rapidly approaching triple digits for our episodes.
What?
Kind of excited about that. So don't forget, folks, we're having the contest for August and the beginning of September up until September 17th. I'm pretty sure it was the date that we said. So please, if you are listening to this, click like, comment on it with a friend's name, be like, yo, dog, you should listen to this, and then share it on your personal page. Get yourself some entries into this giveaway. And you're going to get yourself some Scarish merch if you win. So pretty excited to do that. Thank you to everyone who's going to participate. We know a lot of you are going to participate, and some of you are going to be crazy dedicated to it. So shout out to all of you who are going to do that for us. We appreciate you. If you want to send us your stories, or if you thought of something while you're listening to the topics today, email storytime@scarish.com. If you're one of those folks who's joining us later on down the road, I know this is going to be coming out on August 14th, 2019. Maybe it's like 2020. Who knows? Maybe you're on the moon in 2030 and you're listening to this really, really old podcast.
Shout out to the moon.
If we're still around, I don't care if you're going to send us an email about episode 88 and we're on episode 4982. I want to hear what you have to say, regardless of when you started listening to this. Because some folks email us like, hey, I'm listening to episode 32. I want to hear that. I want to know about that. So email storytime@scarish.com. You can also contact us by going to our website, scarish.com, and clicking on Contact Us. Fill out that form. It comes directly to us. Or you can message us on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod. And Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Robin, if folks wanted to give us the money, how can they do so?
Well, I want to give a shout out to our lovely, awesome patrons, Bernadette, Michael, and Connor. You guys are super awesome.
Shout out to you guys.
So much.
Seriously. Thank you so much for your donations. We appreciate them beyond measure.
If y'all want to be part of the shout out crew, go on over to patreon.com/scaryishpodcast. Tiers start at $1, and all that really helps us keep the podcast going. There's a whole bunch of different tiers. I'm trying to add more stuff on there all the time. So please, please, please head on over there and check it out. And if you want to do one-time donations, monthly thing isn't your thing, go to ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast. Those are one-time donations, and all those donations help us upgrade our studio setup and our little computer that's pumping away here. And
hanging in there. Shout out to Asus and the Republic of Gamer laptops, because it has served me well.
Yeah, and all the stuff that you guys do to help us out.
Yeah, we appreciate all the support, even if you're just listening. If we've never interacted with you on social media and you just download and listen every now and then, we appreciate you sincerely from the bottom of our hearts. Everyone who supports us, I still cannot believe people listen to us. Like, every time anyone interacts with us and it's like a new folk, it's so funny because we've known so many of you for so long because you've joined in on the community.
Yes.
That you feel like you're our friends
yeah.
who just listen to this because you know us. And I'm like, oh, wait, I've never met these people. And then new people show up and I'm like, these are actual people I've never met that listen to something we do. And it's a really incredible
cool.
feeling.
And it's really cool when we get to meet you guys. And we've had people bump into us at freaking Disneyland. It was great. You guys are so awesome. I don't know. You guys make us happy.
It makes it worth doing this. Because I'll be honest, there's some nights where, like, we don't feel good. We're exhausted. We have so much going on in our lives where we're like,
I want to cry.
I want to not do the show. And then I think about the fact that people really want to hear what we have to say. And I'm like, we need to go record. We need to go do the show right now. And it's because of you folks. Straight up it is. So thank you so much to absolutely every single one of you. So I think that's everything that we got for episode 88, though. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.